Hello, everybody. We are live with Emily with Holistic Gut, Holistic Nutrition, and she is here talking to us about gut health today in a four-part series. And also super exciting that we have a podcast that she recorded with us that will be going live tomorrow morning at 9:30 Mountain Time, and that will be on Spotify and on YouTube. And I'm Julian. This is Emily down here, and we are the Academy of Logic and Light. We are a peer-to-peer education platform that empowers students and teachers to practice their spirituality without indoctrination. We bring a little bit of the light, and today we're bringing some logic. So without further ado, I will be handing this over to Emily, and if you guys have any questions, we will be answering them at the end live.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. As you know, you can see some of the information about me and what I do here on the screen, but just, to go over it a little bit, as Julie mentioned, I'm Emilie Davis. I have those letters after my name mean that I have a master's degree in nutrition. I studied at a natural medicine university in Portland, Oregon. And so it is, I consider myself a holistic nutritionist. My education is grounded in, as I say, natural medicine, functional medicine, kind of the same thing. And so, yeah, I'm a holistic nutritionist and I specialize in gut health. And that is what our four-part series is going to be talking about today. As you see, is kind of an overview of why gut health matters. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about a couple of things, and we're going to follow up in some of the other classes about some of the things we're going to go over tonight. So without further ado, let me switch over to the screen. There we go. So gut health. It's a big topic. And usually when I'm doing these things in person or like interactive, I stop and I ask people, what do you think about when I say the phrase gut health? And most people say that, they think about like digestive issues, which absolutely is something that I address and treat and work with people on chronic things like constipation and loose stools and bloating and gas and acid reflux, heartburn. Did I get them all? I think so. Right. But like any and all of those just kind of chronic digestive symptoms and issues that people have, a lot of people have, whether you are diagnosed with something like IBS or IBD or something else, right? Like just a lot of people walk around with chronic digestive issues, and none of that is healthy. So gut health is definitely digestion, and everything that goes into that. I mentioned bowel movements and literal digestion and absorption of nutrients, et cetera, et cetera. Gut health is also, and we'll talk about it a little bit tonight, it's some of you have heard of the gut-brain connection. So I work with clients with mental health challenges, and just a lot of times digestive issues, gut health issues, and mental health challenges go hand in hand because there is a literal connection between the two, between our brain and our gut. And it's, I think I do talk about this a little bit in another slide, but maybe I might be mixing it up, but they're the only two systems that actually have two-way communication. In other words, our brain talks to our gut and our gut talks to our brain. They're only two systems to do that. Everything else, the brain is talking to the system, the organ. So, for those reasons and more, there's a really strong, literal, physiological connection between the two. So mental health challenges and digestive upset just like go hand in hand. So there's mental health, there's digestion. I also work with autoimmune disease and skin. And there are other connections with the gut. But so gut health, the health of our gut impacts really every body system and organ in our body. We're just finding out more and more connections and ways that the gut influences, really, like I say, there's not anything I can think of that the gut does not influence in some way. So, that's just to kind of orient you a little bit and understand that we're talking about a whole lot more than just resolving bloating. So we know that Hippocrates, who's known as the father of medicine, said that all disease begins in the gut. And so that was, that's kind of coming around to like what I was explaining. He was quoted as saying that 2,000 years ago. And so all this time later, we are, I feel like, just coming around to understanding that really that is true. And you'll see there, one of the big pieces of this is the diversity of our gut bacteria. And I'll talk a little bit more about it tonight in another slide, but that's one piece. I mean, I was just reading a couple of research articles, doing a little bit of research for a recent client who has 3 autoimmune diseases. And I see that over and over again. So there's these foundational parts of our gut health that, an imbalance in one of these really like key areas is what can lead to disease or trigger disease, something like an autoimmune disease. So we'll talk a little bit more about it. But some of the other reasons too that this is so important. So there's the diversity of our gut bacteria. There's also the fact that things like 80% of our body's immunity is found in the gut and or the lining of the gut. And they do really important jobs like stopping other kinds of pathogenic bacteria, viruses, parasites, etc., to take up residence, if you will. So that's one of the jobs that they do. But our modern way of living doesn't do us many favors, honestly. And it's this story of like over time, all the stress that we each have in our daily lives, combined with a poor diet, combined with medications and antibiotics and exposure to toxins in our environment, blood sugar irregularity, lack of digestive enzymes. We're meant to make those naturally, but for lots of reasons, some people don't. And then again, lack of the good bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that help to, break down the barrier. And so it's that sort of like combination of factors that can and does create something that's known as leaky gut. And if you are unfamiliar with that, we're going to talk about it a little bit tonight. But it's not just leaky gut that's the problem, but that's one. So I have a 7-question quiz if anyone's interested or interested in scanning this QR code. Like I say, there's 7 questions, gives you an idea of the state of your gut health. And so by answering a couple of quick questions, you can get an idea of whether or not looking at your gut could improve your health. So maybe later, Julie, we can put this in the chat if that makes sense, but I'm just going to move through this slide. Okay, so I mentioned immune cells are made in our gut. We know that, so along with that, what we also know and what like compromises or comprises a healthy gut is this 8-2 or 80-20 ratio of, we want, 80% beneficial bacteria, the good guys, to 20% or less of the quote unquote bad guys. And we want both. I don't know if that makes sense yet, but there's no such thing as like zero of the bad guys. It is healthy and normal to have a little bit of the other because of all of those reasons I just talked about, and because we're outside and in our environment in so many different ways and exposed to so many different things, we're going to come in contact with other kinds of bacteria, viruses, parasites, etc. So it's, the goal is not 100% and zero. The goal really is this 8-2 or 80% to 20% ratio. And I've mentioned a little bit, but the beneficial bacteria, they help create this wall of defense against them. That's one of their main jobs, is to, when we have really high and healthy levels of the beneficial bacteria, that is what keeps the other low and keeps them from, we call them opportunistic. And so like the name implies, they will seize an opportunity when given. And usually that opportunity is when the beneficial bacteria are low. Stomach acid plays into this when there's low levels of stomach acid, and that can be from a number of different things. But so like when given an opportunity, they will rise, they will seize it. And so, yeah, healthy levels of the good bacteria. And I mentioned just really briefly, a wide variety and diversity of the good bacteria is what a healthy gut looks like. So it's when this ratio is out of balance that the walls of the gut get worn down. We're supposed to have like a nice, healthy, like thick mucus layer on top of our, the lining in our gut, and that will get worn down. And that actually contributes to lower levels of the good bacteria. But so it's all part of like a process. It's not any one thing, but it's when all of this starts to happen, the pathogens will escape, they'll enter the bloodstream, the immune system is activated, and that's all kind of part of leaky gut, which again, there's a visual I'll show you if you've never heard of it before, or if you've heard of it, but you don't really know what it is. So we'll talk about it. So one of those things that happens, and my ears are sort of always perked up, like when a prospective client tells me that they're all of a sudden sensitive to foods. That's usually a sign of leaky gut, because those food particles are literally leaking through into the bloodstream. And so it's your immune system that's being activated. And so these are some other signs of leaky gut. And again, like, leaky gut is not the only problem. It is one of many, but it can exacerbate what someone is already feeling. It can sometimes be the trigger for something more serious, like an autoimmune disease. And so, it's nothing not to be concerned about. It's not like the one and only thing that people need to be concerned with. So some other signs and symptoms of leaky gut can be things like fatigue and headaches, joint pain, you get sick all the time, food sensitivities I mentioned, skin irritations, and that can be acne, that can be eczema, that can be psoriasis, that can be folliculitis and other kinds of things, all sorts of different skin issues. Digestive upset, so the bloating or loose stools or, any and all of those kinds of things can be a symptom of leaky gut, as is, things like anxiety and depression. And then those can lead to, and like I say, sometimes the leaky gut is the trigger for other autoimmune disease. So things like Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis. There's actually a lot of research linking gut health and rheumatoid arthritis and other rheumatoid autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, celiac, type 1 diabetes, and obviously many more. So if you're experiencing any of these things, like if you hear yourself in any of these things that I've just mentioned, addressing the health of your gut can definitely help prevent further damage, help you feel a lot better for sure. And even if you've been already diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, addressing your gut can just, again, make you feel that much better and can sometimes put people into remission so that you're managing the disease really well. We're not curing autoimmune disease. There is no cure, but we can definitely manage it better. So this is what leaky gut looks like. And I've mentioned some of these things that lead to it. That's here in the middle. So things like antibiotics. And I would say even if someone takes an antibiotic as often as once a year, that's enough. And if you've had a moment where you for whatever reasons, but like for some reason, if you had some sort of bacterial infection where you were given, let's say, like 3 or 4 or 5 rounds or a really strong antibiotic, that will wipe you out for years. And if you're not also working with a gut health practitioner like myself, who knows like what to look for and how to then like heal you, that can be the thing that leads to an autoimmune disease, because antibiotics just wipe out your system. It's what they were designed to do. But there's better ways of treating lots of different things. So anyway, but if you've had a severe disease where you've had strong antibiotics or a round of many, likely you haven't felt the same since, is what I typically hear. Autoimmune disease for sure. Diet. So I would classify this as a poor diet. Unhealthy is a little vague. I would say poor, meaning 2 things. The diet is, overly processed, and that's inflammatory. Also, part of that picture is that it's lacking in nutrients. And so it's usually those 2 things: highly inflammatory, processed, a lot of chemicals and additives and excess sugar and excess salt, et cetera, but also that diet is also lacking in nutrients. And so if someone is not eating the good bacteria, they eat and thrive and live on fiber. And so please don't run out and buy like a fiber supplement, because that's not really going to do it. We're going to talk next time about foods specifically that are important for gut health. But in general, they are plants and it's fiber. That's what helps keep the good bacteria happy and healthy and living and thriving. So diet, right? Like it's both those 2 things. Dysbiosis is where that 80-20 ratio is flipped. So more of the opportunistic bacteria and much less of the beneficial. That's dysbiosis. Someone who, has been exposed to different kinds of diseases and infections, and sometimes that just, you flip the switch, so to speak. Your immune system, is activated in some way, and sometimes it's serious enough that, it can turn into something like an autoimmune disease. And leaky gut. Low stomach acid, I mentioned, that is part of this picture too. If someone takes a lot of NSAIDs, is what they're called. And so those are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Advil, Aleve, ibuprofen, all of those are NSAIDs. So if someone is chronically in pain and kind of lives on taking 2 to 6 NSAIDs a day, kind of a thing, that can lead to, it leads to liver issues. It can also lead to leaky gut, stress, and then exposure to toxins, right? So all of those things. And again, it's usually like a combination of them, but that's what leads to leaky gut. So you'll see a healthy picture on the left where those, so our intestinal lining is just one cell layer thick, you can see, and they're held together by what we call tight junctions. And so what a healthy gut looks like is that there are no gaps and there is no leaking. So compare that with the picture on the right, where you can see those tight junctions have opened and the cells, now have, there's space in between them where there shouldn't be. And so anything that's traveling through our digestive tract, so that's food, that's water, but we're exposed to all kinds of pathogenic material through our food and water. So food particles, other pathogens, medications, supplements, anything and everything that's traveling through our digestive system now potentially is leaking through. You'll see on the other side of that is our bloodstream. And so we're not meant to have food in our blood. That's not how our bodies are designed. And so that is the problem. That's where those like food sensitivities can come from. And it's why when someone is telling me they have food sensitivities, I test the gut first. I almost never do food sensitivity panels, because if you're just testing for food sensitivities, you're missing the underlying issue usually. So if I go there first, and if there's leaky gut, then we're working on leaky gut, and we might be eliminating some foods for a time, but you can almost always bring them back once you heal the gut. So that's why I typically don't do food sensitivity panels. And a lot of practitioners do that opposite. So that is leaky gut. So I've talked a little bit about testing. It's part of what I do in my program. I start everybody with this. Because it gives me such good information, the best kind of information, in my opinion. And so a little bit about the information that I get. Like, I know, first of all, like, you can't see this very well. Second of all, this doesn't mean anything to anybody. And actually, there's now a 5th page. But so 5 pages of information that tells me, you might be able to see, like, so if there are any infections with pathogens, bacterial, parasitic, viral, down here, these are what we call commensal or keystone bacteria. These are the good guys. So it's testing for the good guys. These are the opportunistica that I've made reference to. Test for fungi and yeast, parasites and worms over here. And then it's got all of these different other health markers, including digestive enzymes, leaky gut. Zonulin is how we test for leaky gut. It's the protein that opens up those tight junctions. So the more zonulin in someone's stool, the leakier the gut, among other things. So gives me a really good idea of what's out of balance, what's going wrong. It also gives me a really good idea of how and what to fix. So I always start with a test. We will come back to this. I think it's the last class where I'm going to talk a little bit more about testing. But this, again, tonight it's meant to be an overview. So I'm trying to give you, just a little bit of information, and we'll come back to some of it. So I've mentioned, like, these are some of the things that go wrong. I've mentioned dysbiosis. That's when the 80-20 of the good to the bad is flipped. I see that probably in 90% of the people I work with, to varying degrees. Some are worse than others, but I see that in almost everybody. There's infections, certainly, right? And so I got a test back for someone, I think it's been a week ago that I reviewed them with her, but she had E. coli. And for her, it was causing real damage. She'd had a colonoscopy. She'd been to see her GI. They had done some blood tests. Nothing came back, right? Everything came back normal, good. It's because they're not looking for these sorts of things. This kind of comprehensive stool test gives me the kind of information where I can see and I understand why someone is feeling the way they are. So yeah, the colonoscopy came back normal, fine. And this stool test, like I say, that's where we found the E. coli, and it was really impacting her. So yeah, I mean, sometimes literal pathogenic infections make sense why someone isn't feeling well. Digestive insufficiency, that's oftentimes like a foundational piece of gut health and what needs to be corrected or supported, rebalanced, in order to really help someone kind of turn the corner and heal their gut. And then I've mentioned leaky gut. Like it's definitely a problem. It's just that it's, as I've said, not the only problem. So a lot of times it's all of these other things that are happening. And then if someone also has leaky gut, I think I've mentioned earlier, then leaky gut will exacerbate what is going on. And sometimes it can be the thing then that, let's say someone has like an autoimmune disease. And so their immune system is creating antibodies towards a certain organ, tissue, et cetera. That's what an autoimmune disease means. And if they also have leaky gut, then those antibodies are then just, they're leaking into the bloodstream. And then there's the potential of spreading to somewhere else. And potentially triggering another autoimmune disease. That's what we know about leaky gut. So it's serious and concerning. I do want people to know it's not the only thing. And if someone has leaky gut, then there's reasons why. And so it's that whole other piece that we've got to look at too. So I've mentioned a little bit, I focus on these 4 things. I started talking about digestive issues. That is, absolutely something that I treat and work with. Honestly, those are kind of like the easy ones. But a lot of my clients have a combination of these 3 or 4 things, right? If they have digestive issues, they likely have mental health challenges. Maybe there's autoimmune disease there too, often skin issues. So these 4 things I see the most of. It's, again, very common for the clients I work with to have kind of a combination of these things. So gut health, restoring someone's gut health can improve all of those things. And just kind of an overview of then what I'm thinking about and how I restore someone's gut. And so we're going to talk about a couple of pieces of this over the next couple of weeks. But this is a well-researched, widely accepted way of treating and restoring the gut, at least in the functional medicine community. So it's called maybe you won't hear or see, but they're called the 4 R's, and I actually use 5. So the 4 R's take out the release here, and I use this 5R protocol. So R's for, the first letter of each of these things. And release is addressing that gut-brain connection. And in my opinion, you cannot address gut health without talking about mental health as well, that gut-brain connection. So it is a really big piece of my program and my way of helping somebody restore their gut. And so I'm not going to go into detail for any of these things. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk next week about, I mentioned foods, like specific like nutrition and foods that are both, can be inflammatory. So part of this like remove piece, we got to think of, you know, what somebody is consuming as part of the reason that they're feeling the way that they are, and that there's potentially inflammation in the gut. And so it's both addressing like inflammatory foods, and just as important, if maybe not more important, are then focusing on and including restorative, nourishing, nutrient dense foods. So that's what I'm going to be talking about next week. And then I believe the third week, I'm talking specifically about probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics. And if you don't know what any of those words mean, stick around. We'll talk about them in a couple of weeks too. So I'll talk a little bit more about this. And then the final week, I'm talking a little bit more about testing. So that's what I do. That's kind of how I do it. So yeah, next week, next Monday, the 17th at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Like I say, we're talking about inflammatory and nourishing foods for your digestive system. You'll learn a little bit about each. So which foods to maybe eat less of and which foods to eat more of and include in your diet for better gut health. And so I will wrap it up there and open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was like about to ask questions, and you literally answered it as I was. I was like, can I type as myself?
Good. That is good.
Like, so specifically, I have a mango allergy. I've had it my whole life, but that was like ever since I was a little kid. But do you think there's truth to where you can like reintroduce it slowly and build up immunity to it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my only weakness as a human. Mangoes.
That's not too terrible. Yeah. And there's some interesting ones out there. I heard just recently of someone who was, I can't remember if it was a sensitivity or an allergy, and they're different and we can talk about it, but to celery. And I was like, I've never heard that before. Celery.
You know what? Actually, someone did, it was a sensitivity too, because she was on the low FODMAP diet. So I guess it was like an irritant, which I didn't realize.
Yeah. Yep. It can't because of the fiber, because of the carbohydrate structure. Yeah.
So interesting. And I'm a big like avid celery juicer in the morning. Like I try to do it every day, but it's like sad that some people just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good actually example of, so I think I mentioned with respect to like the food sensitivity, like a low FODMAP diet, like that is absolutely a diet that I use and recommend for certain things, certain clients. And it's meant to be something that like we do for a short time while we're healing these other parts of the gut. And we should be able to then reintroduce those once the gut is healed. Yeah, it's a good example of that.
That's awesome.
Keith,
this is a 3-part question.
Yeah, okay. Tell me to okay, so Keith's, is that what and you might be able to see this. Okay, so I like this topic. I'm trying to find a good way to ask if there are any particular supplements that actually will help, or if diet alone is the most effective thing you can do. And is that like part 1 of 2?
Yeah. Technically.
Oh, okay. I know a lot of people who are my age and older who just sort of accept that they're going to have a lot of gastrointestinal problems. Okay, give me the third piece. So what's the most active set of things someone in their 40s could do to make sure that their gut health stays cool well into their 80s? Okay, so yeah, I'm trying to think of like how to address that, Keith. Good questions. I think I alluded a little bit to this, but to your point of like some people have just like accepted the fact that I just have like diarrhea all day or whatever it is. No.
Yeah.
No, like we can do better. That is not normal. Any of those things I talked about, really, like the digestive kind of stuff. And some people are like further along that path than others. And what I mean by that is like, if someone's got like Crohn's, diverticulitis, SIBO, and if you don't know, then great. And if you do know, then like, all of those things are just can be complicated. And so if someone's got something, a little bit more complicated and tricky to resolve, I mean, it can just very frankly take years and years sometimes to figure out. I mean, I work with those people, right? So, and then for a lot of other people, let's say with like acid reflux, bloating, loose stools, someone who doesn't have a bowel movement every day, there are reasons, like I'm going to find reasons for all of that in a stool test. I absolutely will. And if you work with a gut health practitioner who tests and knows what they're doing and knows how to treat, like all of that can be resolved. And so that's what I would say. It's like, no, I don't ever believe that someone just has to live that way. And so it's a combination of, like, if you remember the slide before this with the 5 R's, right? So it's a combination and a very individualized and nuanced treatment of all of those things. There is no one supplement. There is no one food. So next week, we're going to talk about lots of different foods, right? And that's probably one of the key things too, is like, I've mentioned one of the really important things with gut health is a diversity of the good bacteria. And that doesn't come by eating the same 5 foods every day, which a lot of people do. So when we have more variety in our diet, we have more variety of good bacteria. So like, that's a key thing. So we'll talk more about that next week. I'm trying to think, did I answer or like kind of answer?
Diet supplements. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there is not any one supplement. Absolutely not. Like, and in fact, what I would say is it has far more to do with your diet and your lifestyle than it does any other supplement.
And some of those supplements have casings that irritate people too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You get what you pay for. A lot of what's on the market is not very good. And as the term implies, like, it's meant to supplement your diet. It's not meant to, treat or be a replacement, for a healthy diet. And so that is what I would say. There might be some things, right, that there's a couple of things that I think like a lot of people could benefit from long-term on a supplement. So something like a probiotic, but again, like I would work with a gut health practitioner who knows what to recommend and why. Because it's not just anything, but like a good probiotic. Yes. I take 3, if that means anything to you. And something like a good fish oil. Maybe like those are the 2 that come to mind that I think, yeah, like it's those 2 things are maybe something that most people could be on. But beyond that, I use supplements as like when I get that test back for people, I know exactly what's wrong. And so it's very, hopefully clear, right? Like why, like what is this doing and why? And it's very short term. Yeah, supplements shouldn't be used long term. And so what's the most active set of things? Keith, you might have to explain to me actually what that means, the active set of things, because I'm not sure if I actually answered your question. Are we talking like literal activities, physical activities? Is that what you mean? So maybe come back and let me know.
Yeah, if he comes back, I'll post it. We've got this one from Kat.
Okay, FODMAP. Yeah, what is FODMAP? So I'm not even sure I'm going to remember all the things. So it's an acronym, and it stands for, I think it's fructo, oligo, monosaccharides, and then why can't I think of the other two? But it's an acronym for, those are all different carbohydrate chains. And so I was saying a minute ago that, so we talk about FODMAPs as like a high or a low FODMAP diet, or foods that have like high FODMAP and low FODMAP. So what it's talking about is like the makeup of the carbohydrate of a certain food. Carbohydrates, obviously, not the other proteins and fats. And so a lot of times people with digestive issues, part of the problem, at least like it can get to be part of the problem, is they have a hard time digesting complex carbohydrates. And that's what all of those words mean, is that they're more complex. And so for a time to heal the gut, sometimes focusing on foods that have lower amounts of those complex chains is what is helpful. It gives the system a rest, if you will. So while we work on other things and healing the gut, and that was kind of what I was saying, is like, it's really meant to be like a short-term kind of elimination type diet. And I would work with a practitioner, a nutritionist who has experience and knows what that means. Because it can be difficult. And the biggest thing I find, if someone comes to me saying like, I tried a low FODMAP, or I tried this, that, or the other, people don't know how to properly reintroduce foods. They don't usually do the elimination correctly, and then they don't reintroduce them correctly either. And so there's a process, and there's a way of doing both of those things that sets someone up for success. But a low FODMAP diet should be something that, like I say, is usually short term, will heal what we know needs to be healed in the gut, and then we can reintroduce some of those foods again. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Is there a place where people can find you?
I realized I forgot to list that. Yeah, my website is wholeessentialsnutrition.com, and I can go back. A slide or so. Okay. Yeah, Whole Essentials Nutrition. That's my website. You can find me there on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those. So yeah, that's usually the best place to find me. And then if, I don't know how many people were on when I had the QR code for the quiz, but we can
post in the comments.
You can post that in the comments if that's helpful. To me, it seems like the US diet gets worse. Some of the common mental health issues like ADHD and anxiety and depression, you're saying that maybe there's a correlation as the food gets worse, that there's higher incidences of those sorts of things. I don't know the data off the top of my head, but I would say yes, there's probably a correlation, a connection between the two, because as I work with, a lot of times it's kids with ADD or ADHD, parents, right, with kids that are wanting to address things naturally first and not jump to medication. That's usually who I work with. And I mean, there isn't an instance that I can think of in my 6 years so far of practice where, by adjusting the diet of the child and the family, the behavioral issues go away.
Wow.
And we're talking about, you know, just all of the processed, convenient snack foods that for whatever reason are such a big part of
Red
especially
40.
yeah. So we're talking food dyes and emulsifiers and natural flavors and then like artificial sweeteners and just the excess of sugar. So all of the added sugar, right? Like on and on and on. None of that is food, right? So yeah, there are certain kids and adults as well who are just a little bit more sensitive maybe than the rest of us. But like I say, cleaning up the diet has gotten really good results for people who have things like ADHD, ADD, even like I've worked with kids and adults on the spectrum, same thing. So yeah, I would agree with you, Catherine. Yeah, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we have any more questions pop up at the last minute. You were answering questions as I was thinking of them, so that's impressive. Thorough.
It's a good overview. I mean,
Yeah.
None of that is food. Yeah, I mean, it's what I tell people. Like our bodies are just not meant to have that.
Yeah.
You know, so what I talk to a lot of people, like especially my clients with autoimmune disease, the really important thing, thanks, Catherine. I'm so glad it's been helpful. The really important thing, especially for people with autoimmune disease, but you know, to answer, I apologize, I forgot the name of whoever had the first question. Keith, thank you. So like it plays into that too, is just the importance of diet. And I'm talking nutrient dense foods, which again, like we'll talk about more next time, because these are foods that a lot of people just like don't eat for the most part. And so most people are really lacking in nutrients. And so they're the foods that are going to prevent disease, right? So the same diet and foods that prevent heart disease and diabetes are the same that will usually clear up neurological kinds of things like ADD, autism, etc., are the same foods that are going to also set someone up for success. I think, Keith, you said something like, you know, what do I do to make sure I have like good gut health, like through my like adult years into my 80s? It's the things I'm going to be talking about next week. Yeah. So
perfect segue.
Yes, stay tuned.
So interesting that you said that too, because you talked about people aren't getting the nutrient dense food. And when I moved back to the US, I guess I came back to visit once when I was like 16, but like at 18, I was like listening to people say that there were starving children in America. And I just came from a third world country, and it was so hard for me to comprehend why, because Taco Bell was 69 cents.
Yeah.
I was like, who's starving? Like, I don't understand. But I didn't realize like these people are literally not eating real food. Like they're starving in a different way.
Exactly. So many
Right.
like ramifications and side effects from that. Yeah, it really is true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for our talk next week.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. This was
You're
so
welcome.
amazing, and I'm so excited to hear what's to come. And if you guys haven't checked out Emilie's website or her social media, please do that. And then tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time, there is a podcast being released on Spotify and on YouTube. And then we've got 3 more weeks together, so I'm excited.
Nice.
Yay.
Nice. Yeah, we're gonna
Thank you, everyone watching.
good discussions. Yeah, thanks.
Yay. All right, then we will see you guys next Monday. And